Welcome to Chapter 1 of the Nimzo-Indian Defense Masterclass. This chapter is going to look at the Rubinstein System with 4 e3 and then the move 5 bishop to d3. Let me show this on the board. We have d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, bishop goes to b4, and now e3. This is known as the Rubinstein System. White has not revealed yet which system they specifically want to play. We castle here, staying very flexible, and now they have 3 options. This video will cover the most natural and logical bishop to d3. Now, White's strategy is essentially to develop and get out of the opening, because the Nimzo-Indian is an opening which is really unbalanced in nature. White forgoes their development and kind of delays castling in order to get good center control. Black, on the other hand, does not control the center with pawns at least, and instead completes development very quickly and is ready to castle. Now, White is trying to make the tables more equal by simply playing e3, and after castles, bishop d3. Just trying to develop, castle, and then claim that their center control and now their equal development gives them an advantage. Therefore, we want to then contest their center control. They're essentially contesting our lead in development. We want to do the same with their control in the center, and this is brings us to the move d5. This move d5 is also a key character in a lot of the moves that you'll see, a lot of the systems that we will employ. d5 and this light square setup will mark and characterize a lot of the positions you will see in this opening. So from here, there's a number of moves that we will look at. We will look at knight to f3, sort of just following in their mentality of developing and castling. We will also look at the move knight g to e2. One of the other common moves instead of bishop d3 is knight g e2, with the idea of developing their knight while defending this other knight. So here they're trying to get the best of both worlds. They're first developing the bishop and then trying to also defend this knight. The issue, though, is the knight is less active. It's a bit more passive, and even though it does have a future, we can disarm this setup relatively simply, and we will look at how to do so momentarily. And the final move that we will, of course, consider is what happens if they take. And we're actually going to start with this because this is perhaps the simplest one to quickly examine. After they take, we're going to take with the pawn. And here we've already gone a position which really is no longer problematic for us. And in fact, we have good center control. We have a great square for the bishop on d6 if we want, especially if they're going to go knight g e2 later and defend the knight. It's good for us not to take and let them take back. The other point is we got rid of their pawn on c4, so they wouldn't even have doubled pawns here. So generally speaking, taking the knight is going to be less impactful in these sort of positions. Therefore, it's good for us to build this beautiful square here on d6. We can then have plans of going c6, developing the bishop somewhere useful, developing the knight through d7 to, for example, b6, or even to f8 and then to g6 or e6. And there's really no issues, nothing too concrete for us to examine. I will leave a game example, and this is sometimes what I'll do if we reach a position like this where it's no longer concrete, it's no longer critical positions. I'll leave you with a game so you can see some of the ideas and some of the ways that the player maneuvered their pieces, the ways they've developed. You can see here black goes for a great pawn mass by playing the move c5. So retreating the bishop, putting the knight as well on a square which prepares c5, and then playing b6 to also prepare it. So c5 is a good pawn breakthrough in the middle game to get a good center mass, and you'll see this mass become really effective momentarily. The bishop develops, and now d4. We strike in the center, opening up our light square bishop. They retreat. One thing to point out, if they were to take in this position instead, there's a nice tactical opportunity. We can go knight to f3 check, and after pawn takes, we win back the piece with interest because we've opened up the position, ruined their pawn structure. We have also the initiative here. They have to move their rook because it's attacked. And now we can, for example, simply take, and if they take with the queen, we can trade queens and just take on f3 and be very happy with the two bishops being super active and their pawn structure not being the best. Nothing to complain about here. So instead, in the game, the bishop moved and retreated to d2. Now the queen came out. We had some trades in the center. And you can see some more trades happening. And there's really no issues. The rooks align in the center very powerfully. This pawn on d4 is a massive asset now on d3 because of its potential to eventually promote and become a queen of its own. And now this beautiful tactic to sort of finish off the game after f takes, of course. The idea is rook to e1. We've cleared the path on the e file for the rook to infiltrate, and indeed the pawn will become a queen if rook takes. Rook to a4 is a slight attempt to save the position, but it really doesn't do much. The queen can simply move away. There's still nothing left to do. Notice queen takes will allow queen takes on f1, followed by mate. Therefore, in the game, white resigned here. So this is going all the way back, a very important way for you to develop your pieces in these sort of calm structures where they decide to play c takes. But again, that's not their only option. Now we'll look at the other two options we talked about, starting with knight g to e2. Here, we continue by taking. Notice their bishop is very stuck here. Additionally, the bishop now has to move twice. Now, taking is a very common technique, and one of the reasons we play d5 is not only for the center control, but it is just to take and force them to recapture with their bishop. And the reason for this is that after knight ge2 and recaptures with the bishop, we can play, for example, a6, going now for the move b5 and developing the bishop on the long diagonal. Another idea that's very thematic for these sort of positions is to play c5, and after they take, or if they don't take, regardless, we go queen to c7. Because of the bishop that's now on the c-file, it just makes the entire c-file very vulnerable and the queen very powerful lying there. But for example, something like this is very, very comfortable for us. We have very simple development. Notice because their knight is defending this knight, once again, taking with the bishop is probably not the best strategical idea. So in view of a3, moving the bishop either to e7 or to d6 is perfectly fine. On top of that, the knight will again come to d7. We have c5 striking. The rook can lay itself on c8. This is a really comfortable position. Notice this bishop super strong on this diagonal. And that takes us to the main move they have, knight to f3. This is probably the most common variation with bishop d3. They're simply trying to develop in the most logical sort of standard way. And against this, we should know a little bit of what to do. Here, the most powerful way to defeat this is to do a direct strike in the center. Again, they're trying to equalize the game in terms of development, so we want to equalize the game in terms of center control, and that takes us to c5. Here, after the move a3, they're trying to take advantage of the fact that the bishop can no longer retreat, but that's not an issue because their knight is not defended, so we're happy to take and ruin their pawn structure. This is one variation we will look at shortly. Additionally, we will look at what happens if they simply castle, following their idea of just getting out of the opening okay. And then we'll look at what happens if they try to take in the center. So first, a3, the simplest option, it's the simplest variation for us actually. We take, and now we take again on c4. And this is kind of what I was talking about with the queen landing on the c-file. Here, the opening of the c-file is really inevitable because of the tension here. And after something like castles, pawn takes, white is already in a big trouble here. Their bishop's attacked, their pawns are attacked, and the queen is just super active along here, attacking some undefended pieces. So they can try to move the bishop away. For example, they can go bishop to e2, but then we simply go b6. The queen is perfectly fine here on c7. we can always consider taking and opening up the queen, but no need to rush into that. The bishop will lie nicely here, and very similar development to what we've already seen in this game. So instead of this, after c5, let us look at what happens if they castle. Castling allows us to simply take, they will take back, and then take again. And we're happy to get rid of this tension because in the end, notice again, we have a perfectly stable position, and we can continue something like b6 with the bishop coming over to b7, the knight coming to c6 in this case. It's less powerful for the knight to come to d7 because it has no future there, frankly, because of the pawn on b6. So typically the knight will like to be on c6 here. The rook will come to c8, and we're really happy. So for example, just to show you what this might look like, something like this, there's really no complaining that we can do. The knight can come to a5, and we can start to reap some rewards of our good development. And the next move that we will look at is, again, after, just as a reminder, we're looking at e3, bishop to d3, we strike with d5, and now knight to f3, we play c5, and what if instead here of castling or playing a3, they play c takes on d5? Well, here we're going to take back, and now they have two options. They can either castle and essentially leave some more tension, or they can fully get rid of the tension. Let's first examine what happens if they fully get rid of the tension. Here we will continue by developing our knight, again via d7. This is, as you see, a very common place for the knight to go. We're happy with the bishop where it is right now. We don't want to take, especially if it's unnecessary or unprovoked. Instead, we would like to take with a piece that hasn't gotten the chance to develop yet, and that is what we are trying to do here. Notice the knight can find a really good home across the entire board. For example, here it lands on e6, where it's a strong piece preparing the potential of going d4. For example, castles, a6. And again, we have a game to look at just to show you what some common development might look like. Very similar things to what we've seen with a6 and b5, the expansion along the c-file and queenside in general. And again, our pieces are just really nicely placed here, coherently, giving us a very nice positional advantage. One could say now we transpose into a material advantage. They really had no other option. We were totally crushing them. And the game moved on for a couple more moves, but ultimately it ended actually in some beautiful fashion with unstoppable mate happening on h2. Notice there's no way to stop mate whatsoever. Something like queen to g1 allows, of course, knight takes on g1, and the knight can even try to return and mate in a couple of moves. So very standard common development. And these games, by the way, I'm showing you, I'm picking top level games. These are grandmasters that are playing these games. And so this is high level chess, and black is totally destroying from the opening. Now, the final variations that we should look at is what happens if they don't get rid of the tension fully, but they castle instead, leaving some tension. Now, we can leave the tension further with a move like knight to d7, or in this case, even knight to c6, but sometimes a valuable mechanism for us is to go c4. And the idea is to continue expanding over here on the queen side, while clarifying the situation in the center with the pawns, and giving them not so much room for their bishop and queen to attack us. If they were to insist, and let's say they come here and try to set up this attack anyways, then they're harming their development. And so we're trying to close in on them and not give them that much space to comfortably move through. Let's examine one thing. For example, bishop c2, we continue bishop g4, and in fact here we can already stop because again, there's nothing left that is challenging for us. Our knight can develop very comfortably. Again, some expansion is inevitable on this side of the board. The rook will assist in that, and otherwise we're totally equal in the center. We have good development on the king side, nothing to be worried about whatsoever. They have very little space and no attacking possibilities. And that about covers bishop to d3 in the Rubinstein system. I know that was a lot of info, a lot of moves. I will leave a PGN in the description if you want to check out the moves for yourself. And perhaps watching this video again or playing through the moves as you're watching the video again might be helpful to remember these moves. Hopefully they make a lot of sense. I didn't want to make this masterclass too complicated. It's a lot of moves, but they have very clear and consistent strategy to them. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and so you don't miss out on the next video in this masterclass. Like this video if you did learn something new from it, and I will see you next time. Peace out.